Hello, I'm Jeff Johnston, host of the Living Undeterred podcast. And today I have another very interesting, exciting guest. Chuck Thuss, right?
Yes, sir.
Had to get that correct. um, is a former professional hockey player and certified coach and motivational speaker and author and podcast host. And it goes on and on and on. I had the distinct honor of being on their show. Chuck and Clint Malarchuk do a show called Warriors Unmasked. And when I asked to be on the show, I have to plead ignorant. I'm not a hockey fan. And I wasn't aware that you two have like celebrity status in the hockey world. And so I get on this show and I'm thinking, okay, unmasked. Why Warriors Unmasked? I mean, where does that come from? Well, you were a goalie, and that's kind of where this whole thing came from. So first of all, welcome to the show. I have lots of different topics we're going to cover today, but I want to thank you first of all for having me a guest on Warriors Unmasked.
Well, Jeff, it was a true pleasure to have you. As I told you on our show, and I'll tell you on yours, you're such an inspiration. And getting to learn about your journey, where you've been, what you've been through, and now the work you're doing, and and to share some of the things that we've shared before we came on air, both for our show and for your show.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Man, I find it a blessing to have you in my life. And I know that it means more than just two podcast episodes. I don't know what it
Mm-hmm.
all means. But
Right.
man, I'm excited to learn because you're an exceptional individual and I'm excited to be on your show. So thank you.
It's payback time. Now I get to turn the spotlight. We get to hear about your life, not mine.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to unpack here. You just seem like a renaissance man. You've got so many different things going on. I looked at your website again this morning and your Wikipedia is, just so many different hockey teams and leagues and levels and coaching. And so let's go back to the young Chuck and talk about the sports you played, kind of what got you into hockey, why hockey over other sports, and then really how hockey's kind of got you to where you're at to be a resilient person and to be undeterred and all these things that seems like a lot of ex-athletes take into their personal and their business lives.
Absolutely. And I grew up in a really small, we were a village because we were under
Hmm.
500 people back in Ontario, Canada, a little place called
That's
Arcona.
a tent.
Yes, yes, and at the time, Jeff, we didn't even have a stoplight, so it just kind of goes to show you.
500 people.
Yes, yes. So
Wow.
but it's still home to this day, even though I haven't lived there in a number of years, and I love going back just to go through there because of the memories. But I grew up in a little village in Arcona called Arcona, Ontario, and hockey back in Canada was just something that all the young boys and a lot of young girls did. And my older
Hmm.
brother, he started, and I've often asked my mom, what in why me? Why did you put me in the game? And she says, well, you were at the arena anyway, watching your brother, and I figured you may be interested in it. And that was a pretty good assumption because it didn't take me long as a young 3 year old when I jumped on the ice for the first time.
Wow.
It just caught me and hooked me. And by the time I was 4, I turned to be a goalie. And never looked back. Spent just right at I think 30 years at the position, and
Wow.
yeah, a lot of fantastic memories, a lot of challenges. I'll tell you, a lot of challenges. But I look at them and they made me in part who I am, because it can be such a humbling position. One,
Now, the first thing I'm thinking is 3 and 4 years old. I'm 56. I can't even ice skate at 56. It's like, and in Iowa, we wrestle,
mhm.
and they put these little kids in these baggy singlets and they come out on the mat at 2 and 3 and they just look at each other. They don't know what to do. And the mom and dads are screaming. Now, is that the same as like pee wee hockey? I mean, there's no way these kids at that age know anything about hockey.
We knew next to nothing, and we were pushing chairs around. We were pushing 5 gallon
Yeah,
buckets around, just to learn and
that's
get used to
awesome.
skating and falling, and knowing that it didn't hurt, that you could get back up and just start pushing again. And
Hmm.
it was amazing when I look back now how they got us prepared to be hockey players, and the way they taught us to skate and to not be afraid of the ice. And because when you think of it and you fall, you think it's going to hurt, but I mean, you
Hmm.
just got up and you just kept going. As so many young kids are so undeterred by any of that, they just keep going.
Were there any other sports?
Yeah, as I grew up, I played some golf. Played a
Okay.
lot of baseball, a lot of baseball
Okay.
because we had a diamond in town, and I played for the local league, every summer was filled up with baseball and golf and a lot of soccer, and we played about everything in our neighborhood because all the kids, we knew each other, and
Right.
back then you were safe. Everybody's parents
Hmm.
looked after everybody else's kids, and I mean, back then, Jeff, we didn't even lock the doors on our house. That's how
Yeah.
safe we were, and
Right.
we spent hours and hours playing baseball, soccer, kick the can, hide and go seek, you name it, we played
Hmm.
it. Um, and it's much different than it is today because these kids, and my daughters included, they do sports 12 months of the year. And when you're,
Yeah, and they have to like bet on they have to commit on one or two
yes,
early. Our sons all went to the largest, the 4A schools in Iowa, which are the biggest schools. And by the time you're in, seventh, eighth grade, if you want to play college, unless you're a freak, a phenom, you got to say, okay, I have to bet on one thing,
yes, yes.
and that's if you want to play college or professional. But for most kids, playing 3, 4 sports is only for the small school kids,
Yeah, and my daughters had to do the same thing, and we've had some tough decisions to make.
right?
And they're both high-level gymnasts, and they've stuck with it,
Mm-hmm.
and they love it. But cheerleading and swimming and
Mm-hmm.
volleyball and all these other things have come, and dance. We've had to have those conversations, but like you said, in order for them to chase their dream and really be competitive, it's a one-trick pony, and to me, I understand it to a degree, but yet I
Mm-hmm.
think that kids miss out on a lot by not being able to participate in multiple sports like we
I
did
do
when we were
too.
young.
Yeah, because I played them all
Yeah,
too, and I actually played 2 sports in college, but I mainly was a basketball player, but the golf team didn't have enough guys
yeah.
in junior college where I went, so I just say I played 2 sports, but
Nice, nice.
it's really, really
Yeah,
1, and I was average at best at
yeah.
that. So go back to high school. So you go through high school, you're obviously a pretty good golfer, and then you commit to go to college. It was Miami, right?
Miami University, but there was a little bit
Okay,
before that. I was
okay.
playing junior hockey, and I was drafted in a league in Ontario called the Ontario Hockey League. And
Hmm.
and so it's really one of two ways you can go. And I thought I wanted to play in the Ontario Hockey League, and was drafted and went to camp. Didn't make the team. I was sent back home.
Is that like the minor leagues hockey or
It's
something?
it's
Equivalent for us lay
it's
people?
sort of equivalent to college, just not at college. It's a league that there's three.
Gotcha.
It's a Canadian league, and
Okay.
these kids, they play a lot more games. They play 80 games, I think, as opposed to college. We
Oh,
played
wow.
35 or 40.
Right.
Um, so so I was drafted there. Didn't make the team. They called me up partway through the season, and little did I know back then, my mother said I wasn't going to go. I didn't even know they called. Um, and later was then draft in an expansion draft the next summer. I was picked up by another team, went there, played about 10 games, and was cut from there as well. And
Hmm.
so there were many obstacles along the way before I got to Miami. Um,
Undeterred.
Undeterred is exactly right. And I used to say, why me? I don't
Right.
understand this. All I want to do is play hockey. I want to play in the National Hockey League, and that's what I want to do. But um, I guess there was a bigger plan for me, and as we'll continue
Mhm.
to unpack that. But so I
Mhm.
was I was very fortunate because back then, which was in the early '90s, the NCAA, they would allow you to appeal your eligibility. And because I had lost my college eligibility, but I was able to appeal it, and Miami was willing to do that.
Mm,
And
wow.
yeah, it was pretty fascinating. And so I went to Miami as a freshman, but couldn't play my freshman year or 9 games of my sophomore year before I was eligible to play varsity.
Wow.
Um, so there was some bumps and some bruises and some toughness along the way, but I had my eye on the prize the whole time. And um, it's interesting how you look back and how things played out because that's where I met my wife. Now we've been together 30 years. Um, and I guess that's where I needed to be in order to do the things that I was going to do. But my time at Miami wasn't all roses either by any stretch because, like I said, I didn't play
Mhm.
for the first year in 9 games. Didn't play at all my sophomore year varsity. I was playing club hockey, and after my sophomore year, I was actually cut from the program. And the
Mm.
coach just told me he didn't think I was ever going to play there. And I politely stood up and I said, "Coach," I said, "with all due respect, you're wrong, and I will play here."
I
And
love
I
it.
walked out
I
and
love it.
slammed his office door. So, uh,
Wow. That's awesome.
yeah, and at that time, Jeff, I really didn't know that he was cutting me from the program, believe it or not. I
Mm,
came back for my junior year, did not play varsity hockey my junior year. I practiced with the varsity team maybe 6 times and, was playing club the whole time. And
wow. Okay.
yes, and after my junior year, that coaching staff left. They went to the University of Denver, and who
Mm,
just won the national championship last weekend. But um,
mm,
so we had a whole new coaching staff come in, and I was able to work that summer with a world renowned goalie coach named Mitch Korn. He helped me with my game, and I was invited to training camp my senior year. And there was I actually made the team out of training camp. I was the backup goalie, so I was
mm.
ecstatic. As a senior, I
I
finally made the
bet.
varsity team, and
I bet.
there were a lot of tears on the way there, but I had made it. And 6 games into the season, I got my first shot. We were playing at Bowling Green State University, and we were getting beat pretty bad. In the final 10 minutes, I got to play.
Oh,
And
great.
Jeff, I'll never forget standing in the middle of Slater Ice Arena there at Bowling Green, and I was crying.
Yeah, I
I just looked
imagine.
around and the emotion overtook me. And my best friend at the time came back, and I looked at him and I said, "Millsy, I did it. I'm
It
playing.
was all worth it.
Yeah, I'm playing in a game." And I was standing there crying in the middle of a hockey game, and he puts his arm around me. He says, "This is just the beginning. Let's go." Taps me on the pads and he takes off. I'm thinking to myself, I've spent 3 years to get here, and you told me this is just the beginning. Are you kidding me?
That's
Yeah,
awesome. That's awesome.
and he was right because the rest of the way I played every game but one, and it
Yeah.
was quite a story. I was given all kinds of accolades for my work and my dedication, and um,
I saw the award, the Terry Flanigan Memorial Award in your bio. It's ironic. It says for his perseverance in staying with the sport despite the lack of playing time. Talk about undeterred. I mean, that's just got it right on your forehead. Undeterred.
yes, and I have that. It's interesting because I have that. Trophy hanging up, or it's a plaque. I have it hanging up in my back room, my man cave, as a lot of guys call it,
That's awesome.
um, and I smile every time I look at it because that one really hit me to be
Mhm.
given that award. And then I was given at the end of the year, I was named Miami Hockey's first ever first team All American. So
Saw that too.
yeah, so
Yeah.
it was quite a ride. But what a lot of people don't know, or they're starting to learn about Chuck, is that through all of that, I was dealing with things off the ice that even in the 90s we didn't know about. Now we know it to be test anxiety. So I was dealing with a lot
Yeah.
of social anxiety and test anxiety,
Yep.
and
Yep.
trying to navigate that on my own because nobody really
Mhm.
knew what it was, and I certainly didn't know how to explain it. I thought I was the only one
Mhm.
that was going through it. Um, but man, it was as I look back now, and I shared with you that I was writing a book, and I share with you the different things that I was doing back then to help with that social anxiety and that test
Mhm.
anxiety. And um, man, it was that was a tough time, but I was able to
Right.
navigate it and find my way through it. And it wasn't always that easy, and I'm sure we'll get into that as we continue on.
Yeah, so you have a professional, then a coaching. Where did you coach, or what's your kind of your best moments in the coaching arena?
Yeah, so I went on to, like you said, I went on to play 8 years professional, in which a lot was very, very difficult as well. It was enjoyable. I would do it all again, and I don't want anybody to think that I wouldn't, because I would live it all again. But the anxiety that I was dealing with at Miami found its way into my hockey game, and I used to get sick before every game that I played. Physically
Mm,
sick. One night I was actually
mm,
taken to the hospital. I was having a panic attack after warm up,
mm.
but in the 90s, nobody knew that. I don't
Right.
blame the doctors. I don't blame our medical staff. Just nobody talked about it. Nobody knew what I was dealing with. And
Were you just nervous of performance or failure?
I think both. I think more failure. As I look back at it, I didn't want to let my
Right.
guys down. I didn't want to be the
Right.
reason that we lost.
Right.
And I used to get just violently ill. I'd be over the garbage can or over
Hmm.
the toilet getting sick, um, and it just drained me before every game. As I look back, and I think, how in the world did I ever make it through? But I
Well,
found a
the
way.
average fan, the other average fan doesn't understand what, I mean, unless you played sports, what the pregame butterflies, I like to call it, and my son's a college golfer, and I tell Ian before tournaments, be anxious but never
Yeah,
nervous. Be anxious. Anxious is awesome,
Means you're
and
ready.
anxious can create, yeah, it means you're ready. It means you're ready to go. You're excited, but
Yeah.
nervous, that's a negative. And I'm sure as you get into we'll talk about your, post playing coaching life and your motivational speaking, all that stuff. You probably talk a lot about the pivot from being nervous to becoming anxious, which is actually healthy.
Yes, I do speak a lot. And actually, I was just texting with one of my clients just a few minutes ago and um, saying just that. Hey, it just means you're ready. It's okay. It's
Hmm.
good to have a little bit of
Hmm.
that in your tummy. It's okay. It means you're
Hmm.
ready because you've put the work in. And she went out and placed third in her event today. So she was pretty excited about
Awesome.
that. It was pretty awesome. Um, but yeah, after my playing career finished up, I turned to coaching, and very fortunate to coach Team USA world at the World Championships for inline hockey. I did that for
I
five
saw
years
that.
and
Yeah.
was able to
You got
travel.
a bronze, right? And some golds, I
Yes,
think,
yes,
right?
sir. Yes,
Yeah.
sir. And
Yep.
traveled to some amazing places. Been to the Czech Republic. Been to Colombia. Been to
Hmm.
France. Just been to Italy. Been to some amazing places to coach. And um, yeah, won some gold medals and a bronze medal on the international stage. So that was really exciting. It's always neat to represent your country. And but I was going through some tough times when I was doing that as well.
Yeah, I
Uh,
bet. I
it
bet.
the anxiety and the depression had followed me after my career off the ice,
Hmm.
and it had gotten really bad and really intense in 2007 and into 2008. And in 2008, Jeff, I had made a decision that I wasn't willing to live like that anymore. And I
Hmm.
had no solutions to why I was feeling like this. I was anxious and depressed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week,
Hmm.
month after month after month. And driving down the interstate one day, I made a clear, conscious decision that I was gonna end it. Now that I just wanted the
Hmm.
pain to go away, and my foot went down on my pedal, and I was going to drive my truck into a guardrail, and crying my eyes out. My foot just kept going, and I remember going 85. I thought that 85 miles an hour was the perfect speed because people travel 85, and hopefully that when I hit the guardrail, people would just think it was an accident. Um,
Hmm.
and I felt like that was the best way to do it. Um, Thankfully, and I say God willing because without God, I wouldn't be here today. There's no question. I pulled over and I slunched over my wheel and just kept crying and made a call for
Hmm.
help. And
Hmm.
and that was the day really that my life took a turn. Doesn't mean it got easier. It
Hmm.
just I had that strength to make a call for help, um, and that's what I did. And I still have days that are not easy. I was sharing with you yesterday
Yeah.
was a very tough day for me. Uh,
You and I both had tough days yesterday. Yep.
yeah, and I know you were sharing with me
Hmm.
exactly how you dealt with it, and I was sharing with you that I
Yeah.
pulled my journal out and I just started writing, and there was a lot of words on there that um, I wouldn't share on the show for sure, and people can
Well,
probably figure them
let
out.
me talk about this. I think this is important for people watching this because we idolize sports stars and actors and movie people and stuff and celebrities, and I'm always curious to see how people are handling or coping with what's their coping mechanisms. Now, you said something when we were talking before the show that I don't do. Now, I do. I wrote a book and I do write, but I don't journal. So I've got my set of coping mechanisms. But I want you to expand a little bit on the journaling. That's something I've not really talked a lot about because most people I talk to in this mental health space, that just doesn't seem to be, something that comes up much. But when you said it, I thought, wow, that's kind of a no brainer. I mean,
Yeah,
isn't it?
well, it's one of the things that I find very powerful, and I recommend it to a lot of my clients when I coach because, as I was mentioning to you, I work with elite athletes because I can talk that talk and I can walk the walk, and but yeah, journaling is something for me that has been really powerful. And the one thing that I make sure that I do, Jeff, is I don't filter it. If I want to
Hmm.
say three, four swear words in a row because that's how I'm feeling,
Hmm.
that's what goes on the paper. If I want to say some things on that paper that I would never say in daily life, that's what goes on that
Right.
paper because nobody is going to
Right.
see that journal. It's never going to see the light of day. And to be honest with you, I have no idea today what I wrote yesterday. I just
Do you ever go back and read? You ever go back and read them?
I have from time to time. It's not something I do often, because I
Right.
know I don't want that energy to come back. I was able
Yeah.
to
Yep.
get it out. I was able to get a lot of that anger and frustration and things that I just needed to say or verbalize to get that negative energy out, and I put it on paper, and a lot of times I just leave it there. But I
Hmm.
find it very, very powerful, and for anybody listening or watching, if that's something you wanna do, just make sure I wanna do not filter it because it's not
Hmm.
something you're gonna share. It's not something
Hmm.
anybody's gonna see. Keep it in a private place just like I do. My wife has no idea. My daughters have no idea that I do this or where they'd find it. Um,
Hmm.
but I just let it all out. And a lot of times it incurs crying when I do it, and that's
Hmm.
okay. There's something that needs to be healed. There's something that needs to get out. Um, and it's really, really a powerful process for me. And the other thing that I've done, Jeff, I'll share with you, is I've done that. I've journaled. I've gotten that stuff out, and then I've went to my fire pit and I've burned it.
Yeah.
And that's really
I
powerful
was
as
going to
well.
ask you
Yeah,
that. And the reason why I say that is this: after my wife died, I found some of her journals, and I did what everybody would do. You know, she's not here. I know no harm's going to come out of reading them because I can't. You know, if there's anything in there about me she didn't like, I can't hold her judgment because she's not here. So there was no
yeah,
downside. But in reading the journal, and that's what I was going to ask you when you say that they don't know where it is. Well, if you passed away, eventually somebody discovers these things.
yes,
So I think the burning idea. I know if I ever wrote a journal, because there was things in my wife's journal that I was not aware early in our marriage. And this is the first time I've ever talked about this publicly. And I'm not going to be specific, but I think you'll understand my point. I wasn't aware publicly of some of the cracks that I was neglecting to correct. You know, this as a husband, I was oblivious. You know, I was married, I was building up my company. I was just kind of oblivious. But in the journal, my wife was very open about her feelings towards things, and I missed it. So I think in reading the journal for me, it made me be hypersensitive to the rest of my life, not missing those opportunities. So something good came out of
yeah,
me finding that journal. And she's not here. I'm certainly not anything in that journal going to hold it against her. So when you said about burning it, you know, if I kept a journal and I had intimate details about how I felt about family members and things, I may burn it. I mean, I don't know if I don't know if I could keep it, that journal. I'd always be wondering. It's like having that gun in your safe. You're always wondering if you leave it unlocked someday and some kid stumbles over
yeah.
it and kills themselves by accident. That fear is always in there. But having that journal floating around, that I don't know, that I think if I kept a journal, I'd probably do like you said. I'd probably destroy it.
And there's a lot of power in that because you're
Yeah.
taking that anger and you're burning it and and the way I look at it is you're turning that energy back over to the universe to
Right.
use it for good, right? Like the negative
Right.
and when you burn it, you turn it into the white light and you share it with the universe to do good
Hmm.
things with. And so there's a lot of there's
Right.
tremendous power in that. And
Hmm.
yeah, if anybody's led to do that, it's a very, very powerful process, and it's a powerful process to let go of some of these things that we tend to hold on to for a long, long time. And
I think it's been proven though that as humans, we retain things better when we see it, hear it, and write it,
yes,
and that can be even ourselves doing it. Not like you know, reading your book or watching a podcast, but actually you taking the initiative to write. That fact that you're writing it helps you retain some of that stuff. And again, yeah, I don't know. I think that's a really interesting thing. I'm going to start talking more about with people on my show and people that, because you now are pretty heavy in the mental health. You know, that's what got me on your podcast was you guys know I'm a mental health advocate,
yes.
and here's these two, you know, hockey players doing a mental health show. I thought, well, this is cool, you know. But so yeah, so let's talk. So we get into your professional career. Obviously, at some point that comes to an end. You get into coaching. You have a very good coaching career. Okay, now we're done with pretty much done with hockey now.
Yes.
So tell me about Chuck's life from that point to today.
So after I hit rock bottom, and it took me, Jeff, about,
Now, can I ask one more question?
you can ask me anything.
Were you abusing any substances during this time?
Um, I would say during college, I was over consuming alcohol,
Me
a
too.
100%.
Yep.
And I didn't
Yep.
know it at the time. And even into my
And that was it, nothing
know
else,
what?
just
I've
alcohol.
I've never
Yep.
done any drugs in my life. It's something I'm very,
Me
very
too.
proud of. I don't
Yep.
hold it against anybody that does. Um,
Yep.
it's just something that it scares me, if I'm being 100% honest with
Mhm.
you, Jeff,
Mhm.
because I've seen so many people just start, with what you call basic drugs or whatever, and before you know it,
Mhm.
just not very many good things happen. Um,
Yeah.
and so that's something I never did. But even into my professional career, I think I was masking the anxiety with the alcohol. Not that it
Mhm.
affect my game. I don't. I mean, I say not affect my playing. It certainly affected me because I was having anxiety before games and whatnot, but I didn't know it. Um,
Mm.
and today, I hardly drink at all. And when I say
Right.
I hardly drink at all, I had about a half a glass of wine a week or so ago, and I poured the rest out because it tasted awful. Um, I
Yeah.
just it's just something that I choose not to do. It's not
Yeah.
bad.
That's the key word.
It's
Yep,
it's
choose.
I just don't want to feel that way. And listen,
Right.
I like to sit down with friends and have a nice glass of wine, um, but I find it less and less all the time appealing. And just
Right.
because I like to be me, I like to tackle the day or approach my day in 100% because not
Mhm.
every day is 100% for me. So if I
Hmm.
approach it with alcohol in my system, a 70% day quickly becomes a 40% day.
Wow.
And
Yeah, that's it. I've never heard it phrased that way, but
and
that's
I remember oh too well what those 40% days were like. Um,
yeah.
I don't want to be here. I want the pain to stop. Um,
Yeah.
I'm as for lack of better terms, I get to be a negative Nancy.
Yeah.
Nothing works out. Breathing is even hard some days for me when it gets like that. I know that sounds crazy. I'm sure you know
No,
what I
it's
mean.
not. Yeah.
Um,
Yep. Yep.
just everything is a struggle, and that is
Mhm.
something that I can control. I remember you saying on our show, control what you can control, and that's one
Mhm.
thing that I can control. Um, and I still, Jeff, I'm aware to have the tendencies that I can have two drinks, but after
Mhm.
two, for me, it's a race to 22.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah.
um, and so I also know that at that second one, I have a decision to make.
Right.
Am I gonna do this? Because after 2, I get very anxious. The anxiety
Yeah.
goes through the roof, and if I need to get to 22 as fast as I can, and then if
Yeah,
I
and the decision-making ability, just every drink gets worse and worse and worse,
yes,
so you're making decisions in a context that you're not clear of mind. So like you said, 70% day turns into 40% day, just like that, and
yes,
if you're struggling at 70%, how the heck are you gonna be doing at
yeah.
40? You know what I'm saying?
It's the wheels fall off, the bearings on the wheels are on the road. I mean, you name it, you have the analogy, and it really happens. Um, and I don't remember the last time I got like that because I've just choose not to. But I do remember the feeling. And
Mhm.
for about the next week, my life is nothing short of a living hell. Um,
Mhm.
I'm anxious, I'm depressed, I'm unmotivated. Um, my self talk is in the can. It's just a really dark place for me to go. And listen, like I said, I enjoy one or two glasses of wine from time to
Mhm.
time. I just have to know that two is where I stop. Otherwise, it gets pretty dark and pretty dreary and very very lonely to say the least.
So did you have an epiphany moment? Did you have a pivot day where just like for me, when I woke up on December 24th of 17, I just knew that was the time. Just now we're just talking drinking, but the rest of the stuff, like the tour and stuff, those are epiphany moments as well. In your coaching career, now I'm talking about, motivational speaking and your coaching company that you
Yeah.
have. Was there a pivot day, or is that sort of a gradual? Finally, you said, you know what, I kind of like motivating people to have better lives, or just was it boom one day you said, this is what I want to do?
It was a conversation on a Friday, and I wish I had the date. I know it was in 2016. I just don't have the particular date. But at this point, I hadn't shared with anyone. My mother, my father, my brother, my sister. Nobody knew that I was having these suicidal thoughts and that I had made a
Wow.
decision to die by suicide. Um, and a gentleman that's in the athletic department back at Miami University called me, And he was like, Chuck, he's like, I'm worried about you. Where you been? I haven't seen you in like 8 years. Nobody's heard from you. And we had this long conversation. And before you knew it, Jeff, I was spilling my guts to him on everything I had been through. And when I was done, I was just like, uh-oh, what did I just do? And
Did you keep this from your wife?
my wife and the lady that saved my life were the only two people that knew. That was it.
Okay, so during this time, you did have an
I
outlet
did.
with your
I
wife.
did.
Good,
And
good,
the
good.
lady that I called that saved my life, her name is Sheila. And um, but nobody else had known.
Wow.
And so at the
Hmm.
end of this conversation, I said, you know, I said, you've known what I went through on the ice, and now you know what I went through off the ice. Is there any platform for a guy like me to share this stuff and maybe help somebody coming up behind me?
Absolutely.
So, and that's what he said.
Yeah.
He says, absolutely.
Are you kidding me? You're ready made for
Yeah.
this.
And I just didn't know.
Right.
Innocently, I didn't know. And he said to me at that point, this was in 2016. He says, "Do you know what the number one issue in college athletics is?" I said, I don't. I said, "Sorry, you know I've been living under a rock for 8 years." And I said, "I have no idea." He says it's anxiety and depression. And he said it scares the living daylights out of everybody in collegiate athletics because we're not really certain how to deal with it.
Now, would you say that my answer would have been mental health, but you're saying that's just a spoke on the wheel of mental health, right?
Yes, 100% and
Okay.
100%. And
Okay. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think mental health is the number one just in the sports for college.
yes,
NBA's pro sports are maybe a tad different because at least you're getting paid, but that could add a whole set of anxiety on top of it as well. Especially like in golf, if you don't make putts, you don't get paid. I mean, other sports you sign contracts, you can sit on the bench,
yeah,
but there's some sports where you have to perform, um, every day, not
yes,
just once a season.
yeah,
But yeah, I would agree. Mental health is massive, massive problem
yes.
permeating through all of society.
And so it was at that moment that you talk about that turning point. I hung up the phone and I just knew. I had no idea what it meant. I had no
Hmm.
idea where it was going to go. I just knew that that's what I was supposed to be doing. And
Hmm.
I relentlessly pursued the right avenue for me. And I did all kinds of research of all the different things. Um, and the one that really rang true was to be a life coach. And
Hmm.
and the reason that I chose that is because I wanted to deal with what we're doing right here, right now. What can we do in
Right.
this moment to make our life better? And what can we do in
Hmm.
this moment to work through what we're dealing with? And yes, we can go back and we can start to heal some of the things from the past, but I was more worried about this moment right here because this is where life is
Hmm.
happening, and that was really the platform that allowed me to do it. And from that, I started to really recall my whole journey because at that point, I really hadn't thought much about it. All the things that I had been through,
Right.
being cut and not making the team at Miami, and then turning it out to be an All American. It was just things that I did. It was just part of Chuck's life, but I started to map out what that looked like, and now I share a lot of that when I speak, and I don't share it, Jeff, to impress people, but more
Yeah. Yeah. I understand.
to
Yep.
impress upon them that
Right.
A, you can do anything you put your mind to, but B,
Right.
on this journey, you are not alone. There's guys like
Hmm.
Jeff Johnston and Chuck Thus that want to
Yep.
reach out. They have their hand out. We want to walk the journey with you. We love and care about you. You matter and you're worth it. All you have to do is say the word. Just even put a finger in the air and let me tell you, I'm standing there right beside you.
So those people listening right now, what's the difference between like a life coach, a mentor, a counselor? There's all these different terms that come to mind. For the layperson out there that kind of lumps them all into one box, like motivational speaker. It's like, what's the difference?
The biggest difference for me is I do a lot of questioning because I believe that everybody has the answers within them, but I also share a lot of my experience. And
Hmm.
like I said, a lot of the different things, a lot of the different modalities, they talk about the things in the past and they want to work on things that have happened. I'm more interested in what can we do right here, right now, in this moment to
Hmm.
improve things right now, but to improve things
Hmm.
moving forward as well. And I often talk a lot about filling the toolbox. What tools can I give you? What tools can we discover together so that in the moment when you need something like, and I'm going to use your son, for instance, he's on the ninth
Mm-hmm.
green and he's got a
Mm-hmm.
10-foot putt for par or for birdie. And all
Mm-hmm.
of a sudden he's like, oh goodness, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
this is a big one. And all of a sudden he starts to get a little anxious. What can he do in that moment so that he can calm himself down, so that he can effectively, because he knows he can make that putt. He's made it 150
Mm-hmm.
times. But all of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden, for some reason, some anxiousness has come over. So what tool can I give Ian at that present moment right there to know that if he turns around, takes a couple of deep breaths, envisions the putt being made, just walks away from it for just a minute, gets
Mm-hmm.
quiet, recenters himself, gets dialed back in, understand that life is happening right here. You can see himself start to go from this level. He starts to come down, clears his mind, walks up, and he makes a 10-foot putt. So I like to, if that makes any sense, I like to equip
It
the
does.
athlete
It
with
does.
those tools that even though Chuck's not there, they can dig in and be like, okay, which one of these do I need? You know what? A little deep breathing is going to help. A little bit of quiet time away from my ball is going to help. Some centering is going to help. And just knowing and being reconnected is going to help. And so you grab them all, you do your little thing, and you go make your putt.
Well, you know where your biggest profit center could be is parents, because I tell you what, it is very emotionally draining. And I'll use golf for example, because golf is one sport where, like this weekend, he had 36 holes on the first day. They golfed for 12 hours. Now you tell me a sport where you have to do it for 12 hours and one swing can ruin your
Yeah,
round. Any other sport, I can call timeout. Chuck, go in for me. I can do whatever. I can substitute. I can there's a halftime. Golf is just that sport that is the epitome of life. It's like, you can't call timeout when somebody
yeah.
dies. You can't substitute somebody when you get fired from your job. Your wife files divorce. You can't bring in a substitute. It's like golf is just, I think, one of those sports that's just up there with wrestling, I would say as well, where it's just you and an opponent and it's you and the ball. And, the first hole you snap hook it out of bounds, dude, you got 17 more. You better get your crap together very quickly or this explodes. In other sports, like I said, you can, there's just ways you can kind of numb the pain, but golf isn't. And
No,
I struggle with that with my son, and he struggles with that. And then as a dad, it's easy for me to live in the past and after the round saying, man, you just, like the other day, he played great until like the second to the last hole. Then he got a triple bogey. It's like his only triple in 54 holes. And it was the second to the last hole. It's like, but as a dad, what you just said, I got to put myself into, okay, but that's over. What did you learn from
yeah.
that triple bogey? What can we do tomorrow so the next time, because as an athlete, you're going to be presented the same opportunity again. And it's almost a guarantee.
Yes.
And you're still playing the sport. You can't go hide. So I think, your job, I think, could morph into counseling parents. I mean, I could probably need a therapist more than my son does.
Yeah, and it's interesting because as you're walking through that scenario, I dialed into Sunday at the Masters, and
Yeah.
and is it Scheffler? Is that how you pronounce the gentleman?
Yeah. Scheffler, Scotty Scheffler.
Scotty Scheffler. What's he do on drive one of hole number one of the final round? Shanks it left, and he's in with the crowd, and
Yep.
I'm thinking, oh boy, here's a fellow
Yeah.
that hasn't won a major, and
This isn't the club championship at, your Podunk Country
yeah,
Club. This is the Masters, dude. And he's 24. It's like,
yeah,
geez, you
and he
know?
admirably found a
Yeah.
way to par that hole, and
Yeah.
everybody knows what happens. He went on to win the
Yeah.
Masters, but at that moment, if he doesn't dial in, and I can assure you that from that tee box to that second shot, there were some tools being utilized to get him
Oh,
centered,
100%. His
focused.
caddy was probably saying,
Yes,
go to your toolbox, go to your
yes,
toolbox, go to your toolbox. Yep.
and
No, I agree with you. That level, those athletes at that level, it's the difference is almost always not
no,
talent.
because they're all good. They're
Right,
all
there you
good.
go. They all hit the drivers 350 yards. They all
Yes.
hit great irons. They're all good putters. It's,
Yes.
and no different probably in hockey and most sports. It's the ones that believe in themselves, but they can handle the adversity,
100%. And because in
you
every
know?
sport there's adversity. It doesn't matter if you're
Yeah.
golf, tennis,
Right.
football, baseball, hockey, gymnastics. It
Yep.
doesn't matter. There's going to be adversity, and the ability to tap into your toolbox at that moment to get things back on the rails. Uh, a lot of times means the difference between winning and maybe coming second or third. And
There's certainly no coincidence that the best motivational speakers and the best life coaches are women and men are ex-athletes. I mean, almost without question.
yeah, and a lot of the things that I do, as we were talking about before the show, I just draw on my personal experience,
Yeah.
and take Ian again, just because we're talking in golf, and
Yeah.
um,
Yep.
I would just share with him, hey, I remember this time. Is that kind of what you're feeling, Chuck? How do you know?
Mhm.
Well, because I've been in even though it's hockey
Right.
to golf, it's the situation is similar, right? I was a goalie.
Mhm.
There wasn't anybody that was going to stop the puck behind me. If I didn't make the save, the red light went on. 10, 15, 20,000
And
people
everyone
stood up,
stares at you.
and they start chanting, you're a bum, you suck, all these other different things. And you're like, yeah, yeah, that,
You can't hide
oh,
either. You're in a big outfit, you look like a giant grizzly bear out there, You guys are, and you take off all that stuff and it's just a human underneath that whole goalie outfit.
yeah.
Um,
And there's just nowhere to hide. And so it's, there's a lot of those things that I like to draw comparisons on. Um, and there's pressure, yeah, it's
yeah.
just me and the shooter or whatever. And but yet it's interesting because I would guess that your son Ian, like myself, we loved that pressure. And I often
Mhm.
say that in my next life, I want to be a relief pitcher. I want to be the guy that
Mhm.
comes in, in the bottom of the eighth, bases are loaded, nobody out, we're winning 3-2, and I've got the heat, and I'm bringing it. And it's
Mhm.
just because I like that position. Is it easy? No. Um, but man, there's just something about it that I think had the same appeal to goaltending. It really attracted me to it.
And so you get into this coaching. Talk a little bit about your coaching program and kind of the type of clients that I'm going to say are best fits for you, and because I think, as an owner of a coaching program, you have to vet your clients fairly well because you don't want a lot of toxicity. I don't mean that to be disparaging, because obviously you're working with people that have toxicity or they wouldn't be with
Yeah,
you. But you don't want to have some people that are so self-defeating that, or loathing that, it actually starts bringing you down too. Um, so is there a certain mindset of a client that you're kind of looking for, or another question I'd ask you is what type of sports you primarily work with, or maybe average age, or, does it matter?
it really. I like to classify it as elite athletes, and maybe that's a crazy way to. But a lot of times
Yeah.
it can be high schools through the pros, and
Okay.
the person that I ultimately really like to deal with is that person that is looking for that mental edge, that mental sustainability, that mental resilience. That no, it doesn't matter what they're dealing with in the mental
Mhm.
health realm, or they want to take their game to the next level, or both. And
Mhm.
I help them do that. I walk that journey with them, and
Mhm.
there's steps that we take. It's not a willy nilly deal. I have a process that I put all of my athletes through, and
Mhm.
and it's refined over time, and it will continue to be refined over time. I will continue to add things that I find very helpful, and what we do is we take them from where they are and to where they didn't know they could be, but they wanted to be. And once
Right.
we get them to there, then we start to work on where we take them that they never even thought was possible when they were still over here.
And
Um,
get them out of the
and
past so
get them out
much.
of the past. And so really, crossing that chasm, I like to say a lot of times, Jeff, because they're just like, I want to be that person. I want to be that guy that can make the putt. I want to be the guy that can make the shot. I want to be reliable. I want to be a starter. Oh, okay, well, let's get you there. And once we
Right.
get them there, okay, now what do you want to do? Well, Chuck, I want to shoot, 30. I want to shoot 6 under par for the front
Yeah.
nine.
Yeah.
Okay, then let's go do that.
Y-
Really? Yeah. What?
It's interesting when you think about athletes that come to mind for mental toughness. You and I could write down 5 people, and I bet you 3 of them are going to be the same.
Yeah.
Now, you have obviously more answers that be hockey related, and I wouldn't be able to. But if we didn't count
Yeah.
hockey, just wrote down our top 5. I know right now it would be Jordan and
Yep.
Tiger and Ali.
Yeah.
Those would be my top
Yep.
3 right
And the other
there.
one I was going to say was Kobe Bryant. Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah.
And
Kobe.
we were
Yep.
2 for 3, and Ali was absolutely. And because I really think, Jeff, that there's a major um, a piece that winds them all together between the mental health, the persistence and resilience, and then taking your
Right.
game to the next level. Because I would bet if you sat down with Michael Jordan, at some point he dealt with some of this stuff as well. I don't have that,
Oh yeah.
but I would have to bet
Yeah.
Ali probably the same thing, even maybe more
Yeah.
so. And
Absolutely.
Kobe Bryant, I
Yeah.
would have to say for sure, because all of these great athletes, they all had one thing in common, is they were extremely resilient, and they did the things that everybody else wasn't willing to do. And
Right.
and honestly, that's a lot of what I put in my program. Is That's a lot of the coaching that I do. Is once we get them over that chasm and we get them to a place that they've got a toolbox that's full, they understand they're not
Hmm.
alone. Okay, now let's start bringing you and making you the 1% of the 1%. And what does that look
Hmm.
like? And all of a sudden they just start making minor tweaks, and they're like, "Holy cow! Like, really?" And I'm like, "It's not me. Don't look at me. I'm suggesting that this is what we do. You're doing the work."
Right.
Because ultimately it's up to the athlete to do all the work. And it is
I
fun,
use
fun,
this.
fun to watch them
I
get
use
these
the
results.
same type of story you're talking about. Sorry to interrupt you
Yeah.
there. With trauma and recovery and substance abuse is I use you'll find your when you find your why, you'll find your way.
Yes.
And I challenge everybody that we all have a why. You may not know it yet. It hasn't revealed itself yet. Maybe it really isn't there yet. It just doesn't exist. Maybe my why was October 4th, 2016, when Seth died. Maybe it was when my wife died. I don't know, but my way certainly was really revealed to me after those events. So for the average person that doesn't have like that type of an event, there it could be something. You know, everybody has to have something inside they have to find a reason to play. You can't just be playing because your mom and dad want you to
Yeah.
play, you know, or your dad was a great goalie, so now you have to be a goalie. It's like there's got to be something inside it. So people battling substance abuse and I say trauma and grief, those type of things. I think the um the pivot, I guess, is I say that word a lot. The pivot point, I guess, is trying to figure out what is that why? Why are you doing what you're doing? And I asked Ian this a lot about golf when he's kind of struggling. I say, why are you playing golf? Well, I mean, I'm not saying that like, why do you play, you idiot? No, I'm saying why are you
Yeah.
playing? You know, and I try to let him answer that himself, but it's hard for me to not talk, so I always kind of interrupt him. But I'm always asking him during the moments of adversity, why are you playing? You playing to avoid adversity? Or are you playing to fight through adversity? Because in sports, as in life, adversity is on the doorstep every freaking day. And sometimes it's on the back door, the garage door, it's on your roof. I mean, it's coming in. And so if you're not playing sports, you're going to have adversity in life. You're going to have adversity in your marriage, you're adversity in your
Yeah.
job. So, sports is such a great, snapshot of life.
It really is. And you are so right,
All
because
sports.
all sports. And as you said that, I think part of that, and I'm going to use the word addicted, because I think
Yeah,
for a lot of us,
perfect.
it
Yep.
becomes an
I
addiction.
agree. I
That
agree.
pursuit of excellence, that pursuit of personal growth, that pursuit of I I
100%.
can do anything.
Yep.
And that's not egotistical when I say that, because at the time you're not thinking, "Oh yeah, if I do this, I'm the man." You know, you're
Right.
really not thinking, or I never did, and I don't think a lot of athletes do. I think it becomes an addiction to, if I get in a slump, to come out of it bigger, better, faster, stronger.
And that can be the opposite effect too. Like look at with Simone Biles, I think, and she withdrew,
Yeah.
and Michael Phelps has talked about his addiction, his mental health issue. So you're right; it can be an addiction in a constructive way,
Yes.
but it certainly can be an addiction in a deconstructive way.
Absolutely, and I think that's where the value of having someone to speak to a lot of times can
Hmm.
come in. I wish I would have had somebody when I was playing to talk to, because I
Hmm.
know my approach was always, "You are never going to outwork me. You're gonna stay up till midnight, I'm staying up till 1. You're gonna get up at 6, I'm getting up at
Yep.
5." And part of that is I still have that in my coaching today because I have such a desire to be a better person so that
Hmm.
I can show up as a better person. I can bring more to the table for the people that I'm working with. And there's times that it becomes unhealthy for me because I run myself into the ground. I become and
Hmm.
that's what happened yesterday. I became so exhausted. I had kind of overdone my boundaries, and I just stepped on my
Right.
boundaries, and
Right.
and then I pay the price, and it's a realization that, hey Chuck, you can do this. You're doing it, but you have to maintain your boundaries. You have to remember the healthy way to get there. And that's the approach that I take with my athletes as well, because a lot of them, they're, Chuck, I took the day off yesterday. Okay, that's perfect. What do you mean?
Hmm.
I missed a day of practice. Sometimes less is more. In this situation,
Hmm.
that's exactly what it was. It was okay that you didn't pick the clubs up. It's okay that you didn't run 10 miles. It's okay that you didn't
Hmm.
shoot 100 pucks. That's okay. Because
Hmm.
today you're a better person for that, because you took the day off mentally. You went and just relaxed. You did some other things. Now you went today and you hit 100 balls in the batting cage and you put 80 of them over the fence because you were fresh. You took that day. Does that make sense? Like
It does,
it's
and I think for like for older athletes that are not really competing anymore, professionally or collegiately, but they're maybe running the 5K, or they're going to go play in the club championship, and they're playing at a level where they're still trying to compete. There becomes this realistic set of expectations where you know your body really well. Like I know my limits when I'm working
yeah,
out. I feel a little ting in my groin or my leg. I just shut down my
yeah,
elliptical. In the past, I would just say I'm Rocky. I just you know run through it. I can't do that at
yeah.
56. I know I'm going to get hurt, and then now recovery at my age is a disaster. So I think as we go from like Ian and kids and go to college, and then after that, sports can be there. I mean, you maybe not be able to can play hockey into your 50s, but I'll tell you what, there's a lot of adult leagues around the country. I was in Colorado the other day with some friends, and they're my age, and they play in husband and wife hockey leagues, and it's like rec basketball in
Yeah,
Colorado. I mean, it's all over the
yeah.
place. So, you can still play sports and you could still have that competitiveness, but you have to know your limits as you get older so you don't get injured. That's the big thing.
Absolutely, and really that, in my opinion, it goes to even these young collegiate athletes and young professionals. You have to know your limits, and you have to, and
Right.
and not in a negative way. What I mean is, you have to listen to your body. If you're tired, it's okay to take a day off. It's okay to, maybe that day you're just going to do some light elliptical, or you're going to go for a walk, or you're going to do something lighter.
Hmm.
You're not going to put yourself through the rigors. And
Right.
tomorrow you're going to be better for it. And a lot of the
Mm.
awareness that I like to bring to my coaching is around that. How are you feeling? What is your body telling you? What is your mind telling you? What are you Let's dig into how everything feels, because so many of us just go on autopilot, and we just, like a bull in a china shop, all we do is we want to be the best, and at all cost we're going to get there. But if we were to navigate it just a little bit and understand the awareness piece and understand what our body's telling us and our mind is telling us, we're going to get there a whole lot easier, and it's going to be sustainable. And that's the big difference.
So, as a coach, what do you tell an athlete? You got two athletes that are both given the same adversity, but one uses it to get them to a higher level of success. The other uses it for an excuse. And I'm saying that maybe they're both legitimate. The person using an excuse could actually be right. It could really be that it was rainy that day, and that it was hard to grip the club. I get that. But then one kid, like Jack Nicklaus used to say, this is a great quote. He'd go to the golf course or to the range, like in high school and college when it was really bad weather. And he said, I'd go there to bring my golf balls, and I would just sit on the range and listen to people. And he said, I could tell you really quickly the ones I didn't have to compete against that
Yeah,
day. The ones that were bitching and moaning and complaining about the weather and how cold it was. And he said, I just sit there and I said, that guy's, I'm not going to compete against that guy. But the guy that's not saying anything is down there in the corner grinding. That's my
Yeah.
competition. And, it's true. And it's not just golf. It's every sport. You get the ones that just, they're given a set of circumstances and it becomes, well, their reason why they didn't succeed. Do you think sometimes people are so afraid of trying hard and failing that there's an embarrassment issue there, that they're better off not even trying at all, because then they can't look embarrassed?
100%. And the other thing that some people are afraid of, some people are afraid of success, because if they're
Mm,
afraid of success, then what? Are people going to start? Are people like, if we succeed, then people are going to start to expect this? And do I have it
right,
in me to deliver time after time after time? So a lot of times I'll
right,
dig into that as well. Let's dig into what
right.
this looks like. And because at the end of the day, and I don't say this often, but you can have excuses or you can have results, but you can't have both.
Right, right.
And so a lot of times for that young athlete that, well, I this reason and this reason, well, let's start to dig into this a little bit, because
Mhm,
it really had nothing to do with the weather, because
mhm.
30 other people played, and they all played pretty darn well, and they were
Absolutely.
battling the
Yep,
wet club just like you were.
yep,
So there's
yep.
more to it, and I think through conversation, and not telling them that that's where you're headed, but just having friendly conversation. Well, let's talk about this. So how did you feel? Well, I didn't know
Mhm,
if I'd be able to play the whole round successfully.
mhm.
Okay. So there it starts, right? And they'll
Right.
divulge it because those answers are inside of them. And sometimes,
Yeah,
Jeff,
it's
most times, Jeff, they don't even know what the reason is. They just knew that they didn't
yeah,
bring their complete game that day, and now they have,
yep.
wow, it was the weather. We're going to blame it on that. No, 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 not quite so quick. There's
And
more
the
to
the
this.
the great thing about what you're doing, Chuck, is all this is transferable to the business world. It's transferable to your marriage. It's
Yes,
transferable to your relationship with your neighbors. It's transferable with, everything that you do every day in regards to a set of circumstances that is presented to you either as an excuse, you're a victim, or as an opportunity, you're a victor.
yes.
You don't even have to win to be a victor.
No, and that is exactly right. And the point that a lot of people miss out on, Jeff, is just that all the things that we're taught and that we learn in the sporting arena, they all transfer to life in every aspect. Your
Right.
marriage, your friends, your work, doesn't matter. It all transfers, because there are going to be rough patches in your marriage. There's going to be tough days in the office. There's going to be, and how are you going to deal with them? Are you going to walk in and
Hmm.
pound your chest? Or are you going to kick the
Right.
door? Or are you just going to storm
Right.
out on your wife and not answer the questions and not talk through the
Right.
issue? No, that's those things aren't really acceptable. So by
Right.
working through it and being willing to talk head on, to give them communication skills. And one of the things that these young athletes need today, in my opinion, are communication skills. Let's stop
Hmm.
texting. Let's pick up
Right.
the phone. Let's jump on a Zoom call, and let's have a
Right.
face to face conversation so we can see each other. I even love to meet with my clients in person at some point. Let's sit down and spend a day or two
Right.
together, because we can really get to know each other when you spend some time in their energy. And you don't get that on a text message. You and I
I'm
both
just
know that.
laughing because the other night I think I was sitting down here and my other son was upstairs, and I'm texting him and he's upstairs. And I think to myself, dude, you're the guy that rips on these kids, but you're down here texting your son. So I just got my butt up from
Yep.
the couch, walked up the stairs, talked to my son, and I thought, gosh, this is just so easy to just fall back to these ways that the road of least resistance is to get up off the couch, and it's easier just to sit there and text,
Yeah,
I guess.
it is.
And I think you're right. I think that's an issue with not just the kids today in their problem solving methods. Is they're looking for the quick short fix, and nobody wants to, you know, it's just like, and you want to build muscle mass, you got to spend time in the gym. You want to get better at running, you got to go run. You want to get better at talking with people, then you got to go to Toastmasters, or get involved in speaking publicly. But
Yes.
do you want to improve your golf game? You got to go to the range.
Yes.
If you want to improve hockey, you got to go to the rink and practice on your own.
Yes.
You know.
And it's
Yep.
interesting that you say that, because and I don't suspect that my daughters are any different than your sons, and everybody
No.
listening that their children are the same is they've gotten such a mindset that I want answers now, and they're not thinking it.
Hmm.
They're just expecting because when they hit send, when they hit, whatever, they get instant results. And
Yeah.
when they text me in the middle of the day and I'm doing something or I'm having a meeting or I'm on my way somewhere and I
And
say,
you don't respond.
don't,
What happened, Dad?
yeah, exactly. Or, hey, can we talk about this at dinner? Oh,
Yeah.
really? Like, yeah, that's
Right.
like 3 hours from now. So it's gonna,
I have to look you in the eye and actually talk. That's terrifying.
yes. And and I often tell my daughters, I mean, you may not want to sit and talk to your dad. You may not want to sit and have a conversation with your coach. You'd rather text or not talk.
Yeah.
But those skills right there, the communication skills, are going to take you so far in life. You will resolve a lot of issues. You will resolve a lot of things by just putting that phone away and having a good old human interaction by talking. And you can gauge the person where they are. You can understand the tone of what they're saying. You can have immediate feedback back and forth. Um, and I often say we have two ears and one mouth for a reason. You can actually
Hmm.
listen a little bit as opposed to just read. And and I'm just a big communicator when it comes to speaking. Or let's jump on a Zoom. Let's do it this way so that we can have that human interaction. I crave that. I do.
Yeah.
And I think they may or may not know it. I think on some level they do as well. It's just gotten so ingrained in them that they can text and Snapchat and you know, TikTok or whatever they do, all these different platforms.
Yeah.
But I still say that there's a lot of power in the human conversation.
To add on top of that, coming from the lens that I have with my son and my wife, is that there's a last time for everything, and you never know when that last time could be today. And so, every time that I go back and think of the last conversation I had with my son, I remember in the garage, he got out of prison. He wanted to move in. I wouldn't let him because I had my wife and the two boys here. And I said, Seth, you got to quit drinking alcohol. I turned around. He got in the car with his friends. I never saw him
Yeah,
again. And my wife the same way. We had to talk on the telephone because I had bought her a house and we were going through a separation. And it was a conversation that didn't go real well, um, on a topic I won't talk about, but it didn't end well. And this is the last time I ever talked to my wife. And so now in hindsight, I use that, that negative visualization, I guess is what the Stoics used to call it, where now as I think that, car crashes happen,
yeah,
things happen. And I don't want my boys to say the last time I talked to my dad was on a
yeah.
text,
That's
or the last time I talked to my son was on. So now I do text my
oh
boys,
yeah,
but I'm
absolutely.
a little more cognizant that this could be my last day here or their last day here.
Yeah, and
And it will be one
one day
day,
it will be.
100% probability.
Absolutely, because the old saying is not one of us makes it out of here alive. And the
Yeah.
one thing that my wife and I have done, and I look forward to it, Jeff, every single evening, is we sit down as a family of four and have dinner together.
That's
And
great.
I so value that time. It's a time that telephone like phones are not allowed at the table.
Right.
Um, if you're sitting there even on your smartwatch, I'm like, hey, 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 they can wait. This is our time. This this
That's
this
good.
belongs to the four of us, and we talk about our day. We laugh, and we get laughing so much we cry, and but we share everything, and we get into some very very uh, wonderful and strong conversations about what the day was like, how they're feeling, how I'm feeling, and it's really a magical time. And like you said, there'll be a day that whatever for whatever reason that they go off to college, and we don't get to do that anymore.
Hmm.
Um, but I tell you, I cherish every single one of them, and they all hold a very special place. Sometimes they're very simple, and sometimes they're very in depth. But every one of them holds a very special place in my heart.
Well, with that, I value our friendship at this point. It's pretty new, and I will meet you eventually, whether it's on the tour or at some capacity. But it's been a great honor to be able to be on your podcast with Clint and have that awesome conversation we had, and now to repay you to have this conversation with you. And I wish you nothing but the best. I know you do very well in your endeavor that you're doing right now with your coaching program. And how can people reach you if they have questions or if they want to talk about possibly working with you? What's the easiest way to reach you?
You can go to my website, which is thecompassionateconnection.com, or you can email me at chuck@thecompassionateconnection.com. Either way is you can contact me through the website or by email, and I will get right back to you. And yes, Jeff, thank you as well. You're right. Our friendship is very new, although I feel like I've known you for
I know.
lifetimes because we've had so
It's
many.
like one of those guys I feel like I went to high school with, you know?
Yes, yes,
And
and
it's funny when you're on this journey and you're open-minded to meeting new people, you run into a lot more people like that,
you do,
you know?
and like I said, when we connected on the first time, and now this is, but I suspect that there's going to be a whole lot more to this friendship, and
Yeah.
I look forward to supporting you and the tour and all the wonderful work you're doing because it's amazing, and just keep it up, and like you and I both had tough days yesterday, and just know
Yeah.
that there's a friend at the other end of the line
Yep.
that you can reach out to on those days, and his name is Chuck because I get it, and
Well, back at you,
well,
man.
thank you, and
I know a lot of people say that you get older, your circle gets smaller, and I'm fighting against that narrative every day. I'm adding to my circle. It's not my circle ain't getting smaller. And if everyone wants to tell you that that's the way they want to live their life, that's up to them.
yes,
But I'm minimalizing a lot of things in my life, like my house and my possessions, but I'm expanding my relationships exponentially.
that's
And I do that for many reasons. And one is just to keep meeting interesting people like yourself. So listen, appreciate your time. This was great, and I'll be in touch with you shortly. But thanks for being on the Living Undeterred podcast.
thank you, my friend. I appreciate it as well.